My name is John Chory. I'm chair of the Harwich Finance Committee. Today, September 16th, we're holding a meeting at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to do I have to read something here. As required by the open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition to anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting, and no one has done that. I'd also like to read something that Mike McCaskill on the selectmen's meeting had mentioned it Monday night in the meeting, and I saw it in the Chronicle today, and I'd like to read it. It's from our the health director, Katie O'Neill. The health board gives the chairs of boards and committees the authorization to implement the directive and require people who are not in compliance to leave the room. And the directive is to wear a mask inside. But it's only a directive, it's not enforced, and it's not mandatory. If people feel comfortable at the board without a mask and can maintain and implement a 6-foot social distancing provision allowing for removal of the mask with compliance. So if folks feel uncomfortable, you can wear a mask, and if not, you don't have to if you can maintain a 6-foot distance. I'd like to call the meeting to order and do a roll call vote. Karen? Is that?
Here.
Yeah, good, that's good. Dan?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Dale?
Here.
Angelo?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
And John that's here. We've got seven people in attendance. I'd like to welcome the guests that are here tonight. Carol Coppola, Harwich's Finance Director, Fire Chief Dave LeBlanc, Russ Kleekamp from KHD, and D, yeah. And Dan Pelletier, Harwich's Water Superintendent. First item on the agenda is approval of the Finance Committee meeting from June 24th, 2021. Does someone make a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve the meeting minutes from the Finance Committee meeting on June 24th.
You get a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify. Karen?
Aye.
Dan?
Abstain.
Brian?
Aye.
Dale?
Aye.
Angelo?
Aye.
And Mark?
Aye.
And I approve the meeting, so that's six ayes and one abstention. Approval of the finance members. New business, discuss and vote on the appointment of Angel Lamate to the Capital Outlay Committee. I was informed just a little while ago, due to reasons, health reasons, Angelo would like to withdraw his name for nomination to the Capital Outlay Committee. He has served on that committee for a number of years. 3 years. And he's also, served on the Finance Committee and former selectman. So with that being made noticed, I'd like to nominate Brian Weiner in his place for Capital Outlay Committee. If someone could make a
I'll
motion.
second that.
Okay, it's been motioned. Any second on that?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Dan. All those in favor of appointing Brian Weiner to the Capital Outlay Committee, please signify by saying yes.
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 Aye.
Aye.
Dale? Okay.
Aye.
7-0. 7-0. Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, discuss. The next one is the special town warrant articles, which will be on the special town meeting, October 18th, I believe is the date, 2021. It's from right now, it's being held at the community center. And I'm going to take one of them out of order, just because it's one of the last ones. It's number 13, and I'm thinking some of the articles might take a little more discussion, and no sense having that particular article wait for the last one. And that one is, the chief will explain why he would requesting an ambulance this year. It's out of sequence, but the chief will explain that, and if the board has questions, we can question the chief after that and take a vote. Chief, welcome.
Good evening, Chief LeBlanc. Thank you for the consideration, taking this out of order. So when this came about, this normal, we replace the ambulances every other year. So an ambulance lasts 8 years. They go from being first due status to second due status, which considerably drops the mileage on them. But I was getting ready for a Springtown meeting and getting pricing together for doing our budget for this year. And when I talked to the manufacturer or the sales, the dealer, he indicated that because of the microchip issue, chassis are in short supply, and they anticipated that build time for an ambulance was going to go from about 8 months to a year. So the newest ambulance was approved last September and arrived last September because it had actually the chassis was available, and they'd started construction on it because they can sell it as a demo if we don't take it. So it's a year old, has 27,000 miles on it. The oldest one has 146. We estimate that it would be about a 9-month increase in the life of the oldest ambulance, or all the ambulances. So we're looking at a significant delay in replacing it, which would put the mileage up. The last time we did this was in '05, and we had the layoffs. We delayed the replacement. We were only running 3 ambulances at the time, and it got to the point where the third ambulance was, we were having trouble passing the state ambulance inspection with it. It had cracks in the frame, cracks in the body. So we're just trying to avoid that situation. It's technically, from the way I understand, it's the same money whether we do it in the spring or do it in the fall. So it's just really moving it up to an earlier vote to be able to get it done and try and chew up some of that lead time that we would face with the delay with the chassis. Anybody has any questions?
Okay.
I was curious, Chief, does this ambulance, the new one, have features that make it more state-of-the-art? Are there technological changes and advances that are going to go into this chassis or this ambulance as opposed to the one you received a year ago?
No, they're pretty much, there's some minor things, the warning light system and everything, they're constantly improving some of those things, so that will change. One of the biggest changes with that we'll do with this ambulance is they auto dim at night. One of the things they're finding is the strobe lights, they're LEDs now, but are so bright at night they're actually causing accidents, not preventing accidents. So we'll look to put that into the newest ambulance. Everything else, it's actually one of the things we've gotten to a point now, they're all the same chassis. The boxes are all basically the same, so we're very standardized across the fleet. And other than normal, changes that would come if you bought a 2021 F-150 versus a 2019 F-150, those changes will be, whatever the manufacturer makes, but the rest of it's pretty cut and dry.
Would one of your rigs be set up, for example, to handle people that have cardiac issues? I've seen in some towns where one rig is set up to handle a more acute, more critical care moment.
So all of them are the same. They're all ALS ambulances. They all have cardiac monitors on them. Every shift has at least 4 paramedics on it. So they're all basically the same. They can all do as advanced level of treatment as we're able to provide under our license. All 4 ambulances can do that. So there's really, you wouldn't know the difference if you were in the back, one ambulance to the other.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Karen, any questions?
No questions here.
Dan?
Yes. Chief, what's the impact if this does not get past a town meeting, and what contingency plans do you have if that happened?
So where we're in a good position is we have a phenomenal maintenance division at the DPW, and they keep our trucks on the road. So the fallback position would be we would just put it off to another town meeting and try and get it passed then, and continue to just maintain the fleet that we have. There really there isn't another option. It's not like we could go out and buy a cheaper ambulance or a used one or something that would that would change the number significantly. So, part of the big expense with these ambulances now is they make them more and more safety-oriented. The stretchers are called power lifts, so they're all battery operated, but there's a unit in the back of the truck to meet the accident standard now that it's I believe it's about a $55,000 unit that we have to put in these ambulances. That added a lot of cost to the truck, but all 4 will now have that, so.
So if this did not get approved at the town meeting, you come around the following year and ask
we would ask again. Yep.
For the same amount of money?
No, it's, if it doesn't get approved, if we wait till May, it's at least a $4,000 increase. They're running right now about $2,000 a quarter increase in cost.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Dale, any questions?
No questions.
Angela?
No?
Mark?
Nothing.
So the next scheduled ambulance replacement, would it be fiscal year 2024?
Yes, so yes, so, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Does anyone from the public have a question of the chief on the ambulance? Hearing none, no other board questions? If you could make a motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
I move that we approve and accept Article 13 to purchase and equip a fire department ambulance at the cost of $378,676, funded through free cash.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
We need a second.
I second.
Oh, excuse me.
Second.
Mark seconded it. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, it passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Dave. Thank you very much, Dave.
John, I have it as number 11. on
Yeah.
the agenda. I think it was mentioned as Article 13.
It was 3 or 4 different packets of warrants that went out, and they were different numbers and stuff. But the new one lists us at 13, Sandy.
The new 11 is the quint. The quint is the new 11.
Right.
Okay, I'd like to invite Dan and Russ up here now.
My bulging disc got mad at me, so bear with me.
It's okay. Well, I think a couple of people are in sympathy. Did you say your knee?
Bulging disc.
Oh, your back. Oh,
I
okay.
had that done too.
If you said knee, you have a few sympathy votes up here, Russ. So, well, welcome, Dan and Russ. Just as a general note to the audience that may be listening and to the board here, this is a very, very in-depth subject, wastewater. I mean, this is a topic that's been discussed by the selectmen, various boards, by Dan and by Russ. It's a very deep subject, and no pun intended. But and what we're addressing tonight is not a deep dive on wastewater by any stretch of the imaginations. All we're looking to do tonight is to look at the 4 articles that the selectmen have put on the special town meeting, addressing 4 specific situations in the wastewater treatment plan. And we'll address those articles one by one, and have Dan and Russ answer questions from the board, and if anyone in the public has a question. But please keep the question to the particular article that we're talking about, and not go off on, because we could be here for 2 days talking about these things, in my opinion. So there's been ample discussion on these articles, I think every week for the last 3 weeks in selectmen's meetings, and I have forwarded everyone on the board the videos to watch and things like that. So, but Dan, I know, and Russ, they'll answer any questions, but it's again, we could be here for a long night. But the important thing is to get your questions answered. So if you feel it's pertinent to the article being discussed, by all means ask that. Okay, so the first article is, let me just get my sheet here. It's to look at the fund costs related to the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Estimated cost is $250,000, and this is coming out of free cash. And I'll let Dan maybe give a quick overview of what the comprehensive wastewater management plan is. It's basically a plan that was implemented 5 years ago, or
16, I think?
yeah, years ago. And there's provision in that plan to review the plan every 5 years. And this is what this plan, this $250,000 is the contract with GHD to review that plan, to look at new items that may have come up in 5 years, different flow rates, different emerging technologies. You'll hear the term IAs mentioned. So that's what this plan is about. It's to take a look at that first comprehensive wastewater plan, which is close to 700 pages long, if I remember correctly, with an executive summary of about 70 pages. So that's what it is. If you want to give an overview of what it is, and then we'll open it to the board for questions.
Yeah, sure. So the original CWMP adopted in 2016. I'm sure anyone who's been paying attention since then has heard this is a living document and the term adaptive management. So this is really getting into the first iteration of that. And one thing, before I turn it over to Russ, the Finance Committee will certainly appreciate is part of this is putting together a financial plan for wastewater for the town of Harwich that takes into account future and existing debt. So one of the things that our existing CWMP is missing is that it doesn't take into account the existing and future debt of the town, schools, debt dropping off, which is one thing that this board, I think, would have a lot of interest in. But I'll give it to Russ for.
Sure, thanks, Dan. My name is Russ Kleekamp. I'm an engineer with the company GHD. I promise tonight to try to keep this in English and not throw a bunch of engineering jargon and terms at the board. So if at any time you don't understand what I'm saying, just please put a hand up and I'll clarify. But what this comprehensive wastewater management plan is, just for the folks listening at home, it's basically a document that tells what a town is going to do for the next 20 years for their wastewater. The reason why you want to have one of these approved is because there's certain incentives. For example, when you go to fund wastewater projects through the state revolving fund, if you have an approved CWMP, that's one of the criteria to achieve a 0% loan. When you pursue these big infrastructure projects, you get either a 0%, 2%, possibly a 3% loan. But even a 2% loan, it sounds like a low rate. For every $1 million through the life of a 20-year loan, it's roughly $200,000. So if we're talking projects that are, significant in size, the difference between 0% and 2% is millions of dollars. So, that's the reason why the towns, you want to make sure you have an approved CWMP. It is a living document. Wastewater technologies change. We're looking at new technologies now. We have to play by a certain set of rules as engineers for the technologies that the state approves. So ultimately, what we recommend for implementation, it has to be an approved technology. However, there's a lot of technologies that have conditional approvals, cutting edge technologies. You should see what they're doing overseas with wastewater treatment. There's a few things we're looking at. If it comes to fruition, these things are going to be game changers. I've heard it so many times at these meetings for planning that someone will say, well, we need to wait for a better alternative. We need to look at this. In 5 years, this is going to come out. The frustration is that each year, the wastewater problem gets worse and worse and worse. The last couple years in particular. A little bit about me, you're never going to find a bigger advocate for the outdoors. I'm a diehard freshwater fisherman. One of my plans and goals in life is to start up a freshwater fishing guide service on Cape Cod because, as far as I know, there's a ton of salt water. So what do I need to have for a successful freshwater fishing guide service? I need to have clean ponds, freshwater ponds that are healthy. I cannot tell you how, and this used to infuriate me, but now it just really disappoints me. Because I'm like a little kid. The night before I go fishing, I can't sleep. I can't wait to get up early, get the coffee going. You show up to the pond, the sun's coming up, had a hard week at work, you need to de-stress. Awesome, life is good. You show up to the pond, and there's signs like this that says, warning, pond closed. What is it closed from? It's closed from the phosphorus. It's closed from the nutrients that are coming in. And all your plans of how nice this morning was going to be suddenly get crushed. I still remember the first day that my dad took me fishing on Walden Pond. When I caught a little tiny sunfish, I had to take it home and make it my pet until the family cat ate it, and then that was a whole nother story. But I think about how many of the kids now are going to these ponds with their parents, and they get thrown off by something like this about these ponds being closed. This is Santuit Pond in Mashpee. We've had Great Herring Pond, Shumet Pond, Mashpee Wakeby Pond, ponds that for the last 20 years I have never seen closed. All of a sudden they're closed. And this was the last couple years in particular. So I'm going to talk tonight. The reason why I get so passionate about the urgency of this is every year we wait, things get worse and worse and worse. I do not want to have the ponds in Harwich turn out like this. I've been to the West Reservoir. I've seen the algae blooms. I know they've done alum treatments on Long Pond in Harwich. If we do nothing, it only gets worse. It only gets worse. So we have to do something. But what's the right thing to do? That's the big debate, right? We have to do something. And when you get into projects that cost millions and millions of dollars, It's very hard to get everybody united to say, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to move forward. So in discussion, especially this first article, that's the $2.1 million for the collection. Oh, I'm sorry, the CWMP, correct. This is gonna look at what I call the big four. It's gonna hammer down the growth projections for the town of Harwich, which we need to know. What we're dealing with future growth. You know, the real estate market right now is red hot. More people are coming to Cape Cod, which my own personal opinion is Cape's overpopulated. That's why we're in the position that we're in. But personal opinions aside, we have to nail down the growth projections. We have to get the public involved. We've been fortunate, you know, as GHD has already talked to some of the residents, been great conversations. We're all communicating. And in my experience, communication only helps project. It's when you stop communicating is when things fall apart. So public participation, communication has to be something that's done as part of that CWMP. We have to give the IA systems, innovative, alternative septic systems, a thorough vetting process to see where they'll be applicable and where they will not be applicable, and reasons why we think they may or may not be applicable. And then lastly is a rock-solid financial plan that looks at everything that Dan talked about. And the reason why the town of Harwich hired us to look at the sewer modeling is to get that definitive for the gravity sewer approach. The reason we do the modeling is to give us that rock-solid financial plan so we can tell you what it's gonna cost as the projects move forward. So the CWMP is inclusive of all those four items. Our hope is to have it done in the spring, possibly summer, depending on, there is a public participation, or a public comment period. This plan, once we get it to a point where we feel it's solid, gets submitted to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act, MEPA. And there is a public review period on that, but we're hoping to get everything back late spring, summer, if in fact it passes town meeting and things move forward. Any questions on the CWMP?
I'll open up to the board. Karen, do you have any questions? Or Russ or Dan?
Okay.
No, I don't. I'm actually looking at my notes from review. I think you answered most of those questions. Thank you very much for that summary.
Dan?
I have a general question.
Sure.
Recently, someone in my household, who shall remain nameless,
There's only two in his house.
asked me, why is it taking so long to install sewers in the town? And
Sure.
so I tell her.
I'll give you a couple, for example, items. Now, this goes back, I started doing this engineering. I remember, and what I don't want to have happen is say, you know, we need to do these sewers now. For some reason, it doesn't pass. This just gets kicked down the road. And then 5 or 10 years from now, we do put all the sewers in. What does that cost us in 5 or 10 years? You have all the inflation. You have the fees associated with the IMA to the town of Chatham. The only way the town of Harwich is going to recoup those monies is to get user fees. How do you get user fees? Is you have to have a collection system that people tie into. We did this is a funny story. We had a project in another community, and the hearing for that project was on Game 6 of the World Series. So only the people that were against the project showed up, and it got declined, 0 to 30. Project had to do with an elevated water storage tank. Well, it got pushed away, and we couldn't get it for the next year, and then something else happened. 5 years went by. 430 people showed up to the next meeting. It was 400 yes, 30 no. Now, those numbers aren't exact, but you get the gist of it, is that typically, from my experience, I've seen at the hearings and presentations, the people that are supportive of projects fall under the assumption it's just going to go through, I don't need to show up and voice my opinion. But the people that are against the projects, typically, for the reason, and I'm not going to say which good, bad, or anything, but people that are against projects, they'll show up and be vocal about it. So it gets this false sense of momentum that the people that show up, you know, that are against the projects, versus everybody at home that's for it, but they don't take the time to come and show the support. That's one of the reasons, at least based on what I've seen in the last 20 years, talking with residents and going to town meetings with major infrastructure projects, is you have to get the public on board, which is part of this public participation that we're gonna do as part of the CWMP, so you can explain these things. Because again, there's no perfect solutions. I mean, you look at everything that comes up in the environment now, we're talking about wind farms offshore and all these sort of things. I realize, oh, we can't do this, not in my backyard, but you know what, we have to start making changes. And it comes down to us. We created this problem. All of us in this, everybody in the town, everybody in the Cape created this problem. It's up to us to change it. But it's the boards and committees tonight moving forward, if we support these, that we can start making a change. Tonight, the goal is to get the board to support these articles. As a consultant, I'm strongly recommending, we can go into each one, and as a resident of Cape Cod and an enthusiast of the outdoors, I'm begging you to support these articles. But it starts tonight. Then it goes to the town meeting, and we have to do, advertise to the public. We have to be vocal. Why are we doing this? What are we up against? Why is now the time to act? We have this other little item out there. I shouldn't say little, but there's the potential for funding for shovel-ready projects. Now, I don't want to say that this is a given. We have no idea if it's going to come through or not. But as a consultant, it's our job to advise the town to put them in the best possible position for financing. Right now, the best possible position is to move forward and get shovel-ready plans together. Because if, indeed, there is that opportunity to get federal funding, it happened in 2007 when the ERA funds were passed, and we got towns millions and millions of dollars when they said, okay, we want to do shovel-ready projects. So the reason why these things take a long time is because the people that are in charge of making decisions, sometimes there's not cohesion amongst boards, and these projects, it's not just the financial committee, it's all sorts of, a lot of decision makers, a lot of cooks, a lot of captains in the kitchen on these projects. But towns do not take advantage of what's out there. Right now, we are telling you there's an opportunity for the potential of significant funding. That's all we can do is tell you. I'm not lying, it's not hocus pocus, it's there. It's what we do as consultants. We advise the town on things that we have to act on. So there's a lot of reasons projects don't happen, and the larger the project is typically the more it gets drawn out. Again, go
I
ahead.
think too, another component is just the complexity of going from a conversation like this to putting a shovel in the ground is such a timely process. Between having this meeting, in a traditional annual year when we weren't doing a special, would be working up towards a May town meeting. If we're going out to do a survey, we want to do the survey work when the leaves are off the trees. So even though the money's appropriated in the spring, we'll be waiting until the fall when the leaves drop to do a survey. The survey then informs the design work, which then takes a considerable amount of time. So there's just a long kind of process to get to a set of plans.
And that's part of the reason, and hold that thought for 1 second, I promise, this is good though. But that's part of the reason why it's not just the CWMP, but it's also the 2.1 million for this and the 200,000 for that and the 400,000 for this, is because when that CWMP gets complete and we start to understand the vision of that CWMP, we have the funds in place to rapidly move into the next step. We don't have to wait for another town meeting to come around. We don't have to wait for this. And again, every year that goes by, there is more potential risk to the environment. This thing only gets worse and worse and worse. More people coming to Cape Cod and all this. I don't want to see the ponds turning green in Harwich. I've already seen it. I'm good. Nobody wants that. And, everybody says that we don't want this, but then no one makes decisions and moves. It is so frustrating. It's just, and I'm sorry to get a little passionate about it, but, we have to come together as one and vote for these. And you got to get the right team. A client once said to me, we hire people, not firms. You have to understand and trust the people that you're working with. There is no doubt a very good synergy amongst GHD, the water department, the boards of selectmen, hopefully this board as well. And we're here to make a difference for the positive. So
is the CWMP going to address, it's going to sort of revisit the remainder of the 20-year plan?
Correct.
So that's going to sort of spell that out. And then part of that, one of your 4 goals was around public involvement and communication. So does that lay out a specific sort of plan on how to do that? I'm speaking as a new member of this committee, and I'm full-time in the town as of last year, but it's not something that it's not easy to understand sort of the broader context of that 20-year plan and how these decisions or these requests fit into that.
It is.
So I do think that's a critical component of that plan and how you address that for the broader folks. I mean, not a lot of people obviously show up at these meetings, so we have to think a little bit more creatively.
So I do a few things. Obviously, yes, we have public workshops as part of that CWMP where you have a bunch of people come in, you talk about all this stuff. But also, given my own personal interest in water quality, I give my card out, cell phone number to anybody who wants it. If you call me and you want to talk for 2 hours about wastewater, I'll find time to talk to you for 2 hours. I did it in the town of Provincetown. We redid Commercial Street. I gave my phone number out to 200 plus businesses. I still get phone calls to this day. But you know what? It's part of being one with the community. It makes you appreciate, and it takes away this town consultant kind of, we're people, we're talking, we all want the same thing. How do we get there? I have the knowledge to know how to get there. It's up for me to explain that knowledge in a manner that's understandable, in English, so that people can say, hey, this is what we have to do. So we do the public, the workshops, and then I'm more than happy to talk with any individual who wants to sit and talk wastewater.
So I tried to explain to this person that this is probably the largest engineering project the town has ever undertaken.
Sure.
I mean, bigger than the high school.
Aside from the water system, if I can do a plug.
Okay, well, yeah, that's, I wasn't here when that happened.
Me neither.
And there are a lot of components to implementing this engineering project. And there are a lot of processes within those components and a lot of people involved in terms of decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, this person kind of gave me a look, like, I still don't get it. But, so I'll just continue explaining how I understand what we are all going through in implementing this plan. Hopefully we'll.
Here's my cell phone number, you can have the person.
I have a question. I'd like to ask you a more pedantic question, which is really simple. I'd like somebody to tell me, because I've never seen it clearly defined, the cumulative outlay projected for this entire project,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of homes that will benefit from the cumulative outlay.
Yep. And we would need to complete that CWMP process to tell you that.
Rock and roll numbers. I mean, is it going to be 10,000 homes? Is it going to be 2,000 homes?
For the entire town, or just for this?
In this phase that we're talking about funding right now.
Yep.
Not the CWMP, because that's
Okay.
money that has to be spent
Fair
to
enough.
take care of the 5-year.
The 2.1 you're referring to?
Yep.
I'm talking about the total outlay to do the sewering on the east side of this town, which is what we're
Sure.
talking about right
Yeah.
now. How many homes will be impacted by it, and how many total dollars are we speaking about?
That's the
Can we-
next
we'll get
article,
to
isn't it?
that.
That's the
We'll get-
next article, I
We'll
think,
get
isn't
to
it?
that when we get to the next article, Brian. I want to get this article discussed and
These are beautiful pictures, though.
moved on to the next one.
Okay.
Shocking.
Dale, anything on this?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is, it sounds like an enormous document. What'd you say,
700 pages.
700 pages? And I heard you say you're going to do growth projections, public participation, vetting IA, and do a financial plan. What about the rest of the existing document in terms of the strategy and the direction and the phasing and all of that? Is that still, is that sound, or are you going to revisit that and change that?
So we have a detailed process once we start, once we initiate. And again, we presented a range for the cost of the CWMP revisions between $200,000 and $250,000. Once we get the monies appropriated through town meeting, we'll sit down with Dan and with town staff and outline a specific scope of work. These 4 issues I mentioned, these are just ones that keep getting resurfaced, so I wanted to highlight those and emphasize those. But as part of the review process, correct, we go through and we take a look at the document, and what's good is good. You've already paid for that. There's no sense in redoing it. And what we would think could use some recommended changes, yes, we'll go through there and say, well, we have reviewed this and we feel this way. Just a general term, a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some CWMPs typically don't look at the freshwater ponds on Cape Cod because everybody thinks saltwater. They don't give them the emphasis, at least in my opinion, that they think they need to have. So I've talked enough about me and fishing. You know that the freshwater ponds are going to get a good look in this sort of thing. But yeah, any other observations that we have regarding the whole entire document, we will bring those to your attention.
And 2, part of the existing document is a summation of MEP reports and kind of base data that we wouldn't change because it informs what we're going to be doing. So of the 700 pages, a lot of background and history information as well.
Okay. And my follow-up question then is, what's your confidence level that $250,000 is the right number to do this?
Based on the discussions we've had with the wastewater superintendent and what the desires are from the town, confidence level is very high to exceptionally high. That it should not exceed 250,000. Okay. Again, if all this pass, we're gonna recommend to the town that this contract is set up as an hourly not to exceed contract. So we say not to exceed $225,000. If we get everything done for $185,000, that's it. We don't send you a bill further out. In fact, all of these articles would recommend setting them up in that fashion. It's what's fairest to both town and consultant.
Okay, thank you.
Angela?
Just a question. The plan that you're working on, does that have all the information we need? Meaning, how many houses will be done, where, when, all of those things? Because quite frankly, we don't hear that. Quite often that a question of that comes up and there's no answer. So apparently the report you had before the one you're working on wasn't that finite. Okay, you got to get it there because it's crazy.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that just for a moment, because I get a lot of phone calls from not just East Harwich at this point now, the rest of Harwich too, saying, when is sewer coming? When I want to do an addition, or I want to do this or that, when's sewer coming? And the answer I have to tell them right now is, I can't tell you. What we've done is deviate from the 8-phase plan that the town started out on in 2016. We have diverged from that in 2018. We were discussing DHY for a considerable period of time. We're now refocusing our efforts back in East Harwich, but we don't have a plan. And this will get us there, so I can answer that question.
I think you really need to get that plan in place.
That is the first word of that plan, comprehensive.
Because it's why should I give you several $100,000 to do this? Finish the plan before you do it. Why should we do this project that you have here? Because you don't have it in your plan. Get the plan done, and then you can have all the money you need to do it. That's the only question I have.
It's a totally legitimate, totally understandable question, and I actually have answers to that as we go to the next articles on why we're doing these concurrently, not one after the other.
Mark?
No questions.
No questions. Anyone in the audience? Yes, I guess. Is there a mic?
Sure. Hi, Sandy McClarty, East Harwich resident. There was a question asked, why is it taking so long? And one of the reasons is because of my wife and I. There's a term that the Cape Cod Commission uses called sewer-induced growth. It's in Chapter 7 of the 208 plan. And we're very concerned in East Harwich with all the development and the growth we're seeing. And we believe that sewers can accelerate growth. And so we were critical. We read the 607 pages of the CWMP and discovered that the old engineering firm, CDM Smith, had baked in 41% growth for East Harwich, which nobody was aware of, and current zoning wouldn't even allow it. And so one of the main reasons this CWMP revision is at the table today is because the old one was inadequate, it was ineffective, it was a poor document. The 5-year reoccurring evaluation is more for the Pleasant Bay permit, not the CWMP. We shouldn't have to be doing this. This CWMP is being looked at by a separate firm, GHD, who is much more capable, in my opinion, to look at that because of the mistakes. They had never looked at IEAs with limited growth properly, so it was a false comparison of the technologies. They had never properly got public input.
When you use the acronyms, can you tell us what they mean? I don't know what an IEA is.
Sorry, so the IEA is innovative alternative. It's just a septic system that treats nitrogen as well. A typical septic system is very inefficient. So there's different technologies that, but the main one I would stick to is that we're very concerned about the growth. And so any real plan should have an idea of what the town is going to look like going forward. Are we going to see incredible? They had at one point 250,000 square feet of commercial space in addition, and 50,000 gallons for additional residential for East Harwich. And so we felt that that was unacceptable, and the town could also save a lot of money by maybe coming to a more realistic growth projection. And so through our petitioning and you know, banging the drum, we've kind of brought this to a head where we want to move forward. I have just as much passion as Russ for our environment. We are destroying it at an alarming rate. If you talk to any old timers, fishermen, Pleasant Bay is not what it used to be. There used to be the horseshoe crabs everywhere. Those are vital for blood transfusions, I believe. There's all kinds of impacts. And so my wife and I would loosely say we're environmentalists. We want to see the area cleaned up. But we're, as Dan alluded to, a lot of people are calling and saying, hey, we want to do an addition. When's the sewer coming, right? We want to do a 40B. Guess what? The sewer kind of butters the slide for a lot of this development. And so we feel it's imperative that we have a plan that has been vetted by the public, not just the experts, for what we want to see in Harwich. And so, although I don't want to stall needlessly, my wife and I would like to see a truly comprehensive wastewater plan, not some, boilerplate from a different town applied to Harwich or whatever else.
Thank you, Sandy. You did it in very good time, too.
Thank you.
I know you could go.
I can talk forever.
And I welcome Sandy's input and Clara's, his wife's input. They've helped me understand this topic immensely, so I thank you, Sandy, personally for that. Is there any more questions from the board on this particular item? Okay, let's, all those in favor of, make a motion, Dan? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we approve and accept Article 1, the fund cost related to updating the comprehensive wastewater management plan with an estimated cost of $250,000 funded through free cash.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, unanimous. Just one item on free cash. Contrary to what the term says, we all know it's not free cash. It's basically left over from last year's receipts, different grants that may come in or other things, and that total right now for this year is 6.3, Carol, is that a good round number? $6.3 million. And the articles, the total articles in the warrant, these 14 articles, are roughly $3.8 million, and almost $3 million is all free cash. So I just want the folks in the general public to know that. It's a huge number. It's about half the reserve of the free cash. We do have a stabilization fund in the town, another fund that we can withdraw on for emergencies or unexpected circumstances. And how big is that fund, Carol, right now?
About $5 million.
$5 million, okay. Just so folks know the town's reserves, because we are still in a COVID pandemic arena. We don't know what's going to be happening next week, next month, next year. And it's prudent, in my opinion, to have reserves adequate enough to take care of whatever we may face. So just want folks to realize those numbers. Okay, moving on to the second article on the agenda. This is the continuing phasing fund costs related to additional wastewater collection system, and this is in East Harwich, and it's to the tune of $2.1 million, again funded from free cash. And I do have comments on that, but I'll wait to hear what other people say to go on to that. Dan, Russ, would you do this?
Yeah, so what is before Finance Committee tonight is a funding request to do sewer design for the Round Cove and Pleasant Bay watersheds. So there are 4 individual sub-watersheds in East Harwich that comprise the greater Pleasant Bay. We have done the majority of our work in the upper and lower Muddy Creek sub-watersheds, and the funding request that's before you seeks to continue design into the other impaired watersheds in East Harwich.
Did you have anything?
Sure, just, so we understand this is obviously the largest number. So why we want to do this in concert with the CWMP is for a few reasons. One, the CWMP is going to dictate the amount and the length of the gravity sewers that we extend into these areas. We know that we have nitrogen removal rates that we have to achieve, but we also have an IMA with the town of Chatham. Everything we're proposing under this $2.1 million. And again, that $2.1 million is a placeholder only. It is not a contractual amount between the town and GHD. The actual amount of that contract is going to be dependent upon the extent of the sewers that get put into this area. Now, the CWMP is going to help tell us that, but given the short time frame we were given to develop a number as a placeholder for town meeting, that 2.1 is based on what we think would be the highest possible design fee for this. That number is likely only going to come down. But again, after doing this for long enough, we know when we give a number the first time, that's what everybody remembers, and we don't want to come back and ask for more. We just want to get the number. If anything, we'll come back and ask for less. So this is going to be a CWMP-driven design of the gravity sewers. And the reason why we're doing this now is that we know we need to do it. If you know you need to do an infrastructure project, you only pay more by waiting. So why do we know that we need to do this? We have an IMA with the town of Chatham. I'm sure Harwich paid millions of dollars to arrange this. It happened before my time. I believe Dan had minimal involvement with the
6.7 million.
6.7 million. So how does the town get the money back for that investment? We have to start charging user fees, which means you have to be connected to a sewer system, a collection system. A gravity sewer is one type of a collection system. There's low pressure, there's vacuum systems, there's all these other different things. So we know that we need to extend these sewers so we can start collecting user fees to put in towards the IMA, what we're paying for. Like, we know we need to do it. You know, with regards, there are areas in here, and this is what both the modeling and the CWMP will tell us, that gravity sewers may not be able to reach, so that might be a low pressure, it might be an IA system, it might be one of these things. But we know for this particular, for example, with the IA systems, you are not connected to a collection system. So if an IA system goes into one of these areas in East Harwich, there'll be no user fee going to the IMA. So what's the likelihood of us going back to Chatham and say, hey, can we have our money back? We're just going to do all hundreds of IA systems. We know it's not going to happen. And certain things deserve to be studied and looked at, but when you know you need to do an infrastructure project, there's a lot of risk with waiting. One, look what happened with the pandemic. All these storms on the Gulf Coast that are hitting the factories that make the resins for the PVC, that makes the sewer pipes. There's all these delays in materials. Talk to any vendor now. There's all sorts of variables that come up. And the longer we wait, the more variables come in. You're also going to save roughly a 3 to 5% inflation cost for years. So let's say, for example, we don't want to do this now. We want to look at the other options. We want to wait for the CWMP to be done 2, 3, 4, 5 years go down the line. Well, that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years of lost revenues from user connections from these areas. That's 2, 3, 4, 5 years of 3 to 5% inflation on an 8-digit construction project, which is going to cost the people of Harwich millions of dollars, right? We want to do what's in the best financial interest of the people for Harwich. If we know we need to do an infrastructure project, the longer we wait, that'll be the last time I say it. I got that point driven home. But then the other thing too is with this potential opportunity for federal funding, having shovel-ready projects, we know if we do this now, we can at least start the survey when the leaves are down to get the best possible survey cost, whether we can save $1 or $10 million, you save money where you can, right? So we want to do this with the right progression. We want to do the survey when the leaves are off the trees, we get the best accurate information, we can start the design process for the core areas that we know we need to sewer based on the nitrogen removal rates and the IMA that Harwich has with Chatham. So that's why we're doing this in concert with the CWMP. We know there's just too many things that we know we need to do right now, and we've decided to act on it. So, questions? Go ahead.
You want to answer Brian's questions on
Yes, sure.
The quantities of homes and scope of the project?
So I believe we mentioned at the last meeting, do you want me to keep going, Dan?
Yeah,
Do you
go
want? I gave you a range between 450 and 600 homes. We developed this figure here, and please note, this is draft. We had a very short time to put this together. It's not finite, it's not rock solid, but it's in a very good direction, but it is still draft. So I think we are somewhere around the, what's it, 400?
487.
12, 26, it looks like.
The two was 487, so if you're looking at the bottom two graphs, the total parcels on the left for the Round Cove, we have 207, and then total parcels for Pleasant Bay is 265, so that puts us at 472.
I worked some numbers, which I'm going to share with you shortly. I based it on 500 homes, so I'm pretty.
Good.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Okay, go ahead.
And so you were looking for parcels and cost. So the average cost per parcel that we experienced in the phase 2 area on Robert Hour's contract was about $55,000 per parcel. On the RJV contract, it was about $65,000 per parcel. If you apply those factors to this quantity, you get between 25 and 30 million. But keep in mind, those figures are from 2018, I believe, 2019, so escalate those based on inflation today, we're probably looking at 30 to 40 plus million.
And then what you're describing there is the cost, the 2.1 million is just to do the design, but after you do the design, it's the implementation of that design is what's gonna cost what you just described,
Yes.
the 30 million bucks.
However, it may not need to be, 30 or 40 million at once. It would likely be broken up into construction sequences and smaller bites of the apple. But
And what I would just add is it's also up, to come up with the most cost-effective design. Well, those numbers based per parcel was based on the designs that you had.
Yeah, I understand everything's an estimate at this point. How long will the design take? So if we're gonna do the CWMP by next summer, say at the latest, how long will this design take in parallel?
If possible, we'd love to get the survey started over the winter, if that's completed. 12 to 18 months, but we'll try to get it. I can get you a better estimate on that when I really look at it. But
I'm on a right estimate,
it's in that,
don't
it's in
worry.
that year and a half.
Yeah, I get it, thank you.
Yeah, I had, like I said, I put a plug number of 500 homes at an average cost of $62,000 apiece.
Yeah.
And I had a cost of $31 million, so pretty darn close.
not too
Yeah.
bad coming
So-
in.
For an amateur, huh?
Yeah.
Dan, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Brian, any more
All set.
follow-up?
This was helpful.
Dale?
Yeah, just a quick question. So how long will the CWMP take?
We're hoping to have it done, put 6 months plus or minus. We're hoping to have it done by mid to the end of summer of 2022.
Okay. And would that inform this design process?
That will drive the design. With this $2.1 million design, it's about a 12 to 18 month project. So this is going to be one of the first areas we look at with the CWMP. And again, we know we have these factors of the nitrogen removal and with the IMA that we have to start doing the sewers. As part of the sewer modeling that we're under contract with the town right now, we have a conceptual design. We have all the elevations, all the profiles. So with that being said, maybe it will be less than a 12-month design. But again, we know we're going to put the sewers in this area, so we'll be doing that in concert with the CWMP.
So if you do the two in concert and the first one might inform the second one, isn't there a risk that you'd be doing something that needs to be
There's always a
undone or
risk,
redone, or?
but we feel that risk was small enough where we would advise the town and recommend the town to move forward with the $2.1 million, because we are fairly certain. We would not, if we thought that the CWMP was gonna take you in a radically different direction that wouldn't require sewers out there, we wouldn't have pushed for this $2.1 million at all. It's, with the.
And keep in mind too, as he mentioned, the survey is gonna be one of the first things that we do. The survey is used by GHD to complete their design and layout. So the survey work will be done while they're working on the CWMP revision, prioritizing East Harwich. So once that is wrapped up, you pick up from the survey
Right.
and keep moving.
We're just trying to put together the most time and cost-efficient schedule to get things implemented as soon as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've worked in project management for 40 years, and I understand when you try to compress schedules, you end up tripping over your own
Oh,
sneaker laces.
it's
sometimes.
been there, done that, believe me. And if we thought it was a risk or an elevated risk, we would never look at this aggressive of a schedule.
Angela?
I think you're doing a good project there, but I think you're gonna need to explain to the residents at the meeting that you actually do have this project done, and it's gonna happen, because otherwise you're gonna be asking them to spend money that doesn't exist in a plan. And I think that's one of the problems that we've had for a long time. So I think if you can somehow make people know that you're right, that the project is gonna be done that way, I think you'll get it approved. Otherwise, hey, finish your project and then we'll talk about it. So I think you need to do that.
The public needs to vote, you know, they're the ones ultimately that have the power. So absolutely 100% agreed. That's part of the public participation, is part of the CWMP. Reason why I give my cell phone number out is I'm trying to, but at some point, the public also has a response. If you have questions, ask them. Don't sit dormant and then just not do anything about it too. There is a responsibility for the public too, if you're involved. You have to ask the questions too, because we need to know what answers we need to give.
And too, I guess, Angelo, to your, you know, what's your plan, right? The town does have a plan. We actually have two, one being the CWMP, the other is the Targeted Watershed Management Plan that the town holds with the Pleasant Bay Alliance. And that does have those nitrogen removal requirements that we're talking about achieving here are laid out in the Targeted Watershed Management Plan that we're under permit.
That's fine.
But you need,
Put a
right,
plan up.
yeah.
Mark?
No question.
Just other, number two, I want to interject with, not only is the roughly $62,000 per cost to put a home online, there's a cost that the homeowner has to burden too. And again, I estimated that's anywhere from 10 to 20,000, depending on whether they needed an ejector pump or something like that. What would you think is the average hookup for a homeowner?
So, of a survey of, I believe it's 97 or 98 homes in Chatham, the average, if you add them all up, is about just over 10,000. I think it's $10,100 to $200. That range goes from as low as 3,000 to 5,000, as high as 25 to 50. Because it is a pretty large table. I'd be happy to share it with the group. That includes, you know, length of service, if there's landscaping, driveway repaved. So there's a lot of factors that can go into that.
I just, again, for the public that may watch this on the YouTube video, that there's still additional burden on the homeowner that
Certainly.
they'll have to incur along with taxes like the rest of the town. So,
John, one quick
yeah.
question.
Sure.
In terms of checks and balances, who does one go to in order to report how things are progressing on this project?
Who would they come to inquire?
To report out how the project is progressing, are the
How do
target
you
dates
report
being
status?
met?
Dan meets
Who are the regulators?
The Pleasant Bay Alliance, Mass DEP. So specifically in East Harwich, we are tied to submit an annual report to DEP every year that highlights the different progress that we've made. This year,
So you're the guy that I would go to say, how's the project
Yes.
progressing? Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
And Dan, like I haven't contacted Russ at all, but I will in the future. But Dan's always had his door open to me too. Dan. And, is there anyone from the public, Sandy? Again, you know, to the article and.
This is why I came. So, Russ Kleekamp, you said we know we're doing this sewer project, and I've been asking questions as much as anybody has. I still have not seen a comprehensive evaluation of why we should do sewer in this area. As far as the IMA agreement with Chatham, the $6.77 million that we agreed to, it's my understanding that if we did half of the flow, we're currently scheduled for 300,000 gallons roughly to go to Chatham. If we only did 150,000 gallons, they would have to buy back the remaining capacity. Is that correct, Ian?
have to? I wouldn't say have to.
No?
There are buyback provisions within the IMA, but I don't know that they have.
Okay, maybe you could explain that a little more, because I'm curious. And I guess to piggyback to that comment, although Chatham was focused on Pleasant Bay, there is a thought that maybe Chatham would take flows from other areas. So it's not, maybe, we're not locked in, I don't believe, that East Harwich has to send 300,000 gallons to Chatham. I believe we could, maybe negotiate some of the areas like Allen Harbor that really need removal, 100% removal, to Chatham. Maybe, maybe not, but these are questions that I have. So I don't see as this project, the 2.1, as we haven't settled the issue of whether alternative technologies can be used there, and maybe they can't. But the whole point of the CWMP revision is to get public input into what kind of growth assumptions we want and to properly evaluate the alternative technologies before we have a shovel in the ground. I know we want to get shovels out, but we got to have a plan first. And I concur with Angelo and some of the other comments is, let's get the plan first. Let's not get the cart in front of the horse. Get the plan done. Realistically, how far back are we pushing this project? If we could have the plans by fall, Springtown meeting, it would be negligible. In the arc of a 40-year project, I would say it's negligible. And so I'll leave, those are my comments. I would like to understand the buyback better. Maybe if Carol Coppola or Dan could answer that.
I don't have the flow buyback provision paragraph from the IMA in my head. We'll have to talk about it.
But it is definitely been talked about. The language is there that we could, it's dynamic. We're not locked to 300,000 gallons. If we went to 200, they're not going to quibble over, I guess if we said, hey, we're not doing any of it, give us back the 7 million, they'd have a problem. But if we're off by whatever, $1 million or 500,000, they're probably willing to.
I don't know, how would you feel about giving back a couple $1 million? I mean, I just think that with respect to 300,000 gallons, right now, as you noted earlier, there was 55,000 gallons of that was baked in with the 41% growth. Current data is showing that we won't hit the 300,000 gallons, and we won't need to likely hit much over 200,000 to meet our nitrogen removal requirements in East Harwich. That said, there is surplus capacity, and there's room in the IMA to allow wastewater flows from Great Sand Lakes. What I am intending on doing is having the conversation with Chatham to see if they would be willing to accept flows from other watersheds in Harwich, Allen Harbor, or otherwise, so that we can maximize the flow in Chatham, because it is the cheapest treatment we are going to get for our wastewater, hands down. We got a steal for the 300,000 gallons in Chatham. We're never going to be able to treat wastewater for that cheap. So I think it's in the town's best interest to maximize that IMA and maximize that 300,000 gallons. The sewer plan that we're discussing here and what we're looking at for Round Cove and Pleasant Bay reflects removing only the minimum amount of nitrogen removal requirement to get our baseline. The removals projected in here don't include future growth, which is one of Sandy's big concerns, is sewer-induced growth. The topic of growth is planned to be discussed in the CWMP, which could inform a future phase in East Harwich if we do need it. But if we can mitigate future development through land acquisition or other means, that would allow us to, again, maximize that flow in other areas of Harwich.
So if I could further comment, so even if we did all of the homes in East Harwich, even if we approve this plan, we're still, I think, at about 216,000 gallons per day. We're still going to have to visit this question of buyback. And I believe there are provisions with, and I don't know the details of it, so I won't comment on it, but we have to, this is, a buyback is not something, anyway, it's a reality. And so I think we're going to have that discussion at some point. And then as far as the IA, and this might get, I'll try to keep it simple, but one of the reasons I want to see a closer look at IAs is because the technology has gotten a lot better. So in terms of efficiency, they're 50% more efficient. Current Title V standards are 19 milligrams per liter. You don't have to remember that, but now they're hitting 10 milligrams per liter. So they're much more efficient. And the other factor that nobody knows exactly when, but Title V law is being reviewed, and there's at some point, I believe, they're going to mandate the newer technology IAs. So just like cesspools were phased out, Title V's are going to be phased out for these newer IAs. Well, that changes your model. If you're looking at your area and you're designing for sewer, it's based on your old inefficient septic system. So I feel that a closer look at the latest IA technology, number one, could be a great tool, but it also could impact our sewer calculations because it's based on inefficient technology that is, I believe, subject to change in the near future.
Thanks, Andy. And went off a little subject there. Again, we're just trying to address the article on East Harwich, sewering of East Harwich. IAs are,
Well, the only reason I got into the weeds is because I feel it's inappropriate to put this article ahead of or in conjunction with a proper review of IAs and growth projections. So I'm arguing that let's do the plan and then figure out what kind of sewer we want.
Is there, John, can I ask a question? Is there a timeline for which we have to complete the work in East Harwich? Like, are we up against
we're done
some,
in East Harwich now. This
I
is
mean, or this, for this 2.1, the additional, there's no timeline that we're? And it ties back to, sorry, what Sandy was saying, because if you postpone, if we don't approve the 2.1, then it gets pushed to 2024 potentially or something. And so I'm just wondering if we have a risk there.
Yes, I guess in short, with respect to the timeline, I guess a yes and a no. So our targeted watershed management permit right now in East Harwich, the revised nitrogen attenuation rate suggests that we've met our first 5-year commitment. We're in year 3. So 2025 is going to start our next 5-year block. We have another 1,565 kilograms to remove by the end of that 5-year window. So
By 2030, yeah.
if that, if we put it out, and we would also have to, if we want to switch and do IAs, we also have to deploy enough IA systems in the next 8 years to remediate the nitrogen as well, which,
When you have to validate that technology is the right technology too.
Just a couple things now, and Sandy, we might have to agree to disagree on a few of these, and I truly appreciate your concern, and believe me, if everybody had your mindset, we would not be in this issue. But here are the facts when it comes to IA systems and the rules we are up against. We have to deploy approved technologies. These are conditionally approved. They have somewhat good nitrogen removal rates, but if we delay this a year, we have to wait for full approvals. If indeed, we said 472 parcels, correct? That was the number. We would have to convince 472 homeowners that IAs are in your best interest. And what an IA is like a mini wastewater treatment plant. There's a series of moving parts that need operations and maintenance. It's not like a regular Title V system that's just a leach pit and some concrete structures. With some of the other communities we've been talking to, where IA systems have been involved, the owners and operators have done things like turn off blowers and aeration that's required in the nitrogen removal process because energy bills are much higher than expected, and because they're noisy and they don't want to listen to them at night. And these are the issues with IA systems on a mass deployment, is that you are leaving it up to the individual homeowner to now become a mini wastewater treatment plant operator. So how do you make sure that they get this 10 milligrams per liter? Is that the IA system has to be kept up and running in optimal conditions. When you run by a collection system, all of this flow goes to a wastewater treatment plant like Chatham's, and they are under a strict state and federal mandate to meet certain nitrogen limits. They have to meet 3 milligrams per liter, or else the chief operator at that plant has to report that, or else his license goes on the line. So there is incentive to get that low nitrogen removal. With the wastewater treatment at Chatham, we're talking 3 or 4 milligrams per liter. IA systems, best case, are 10 and 11. And again, Sandy, it's not that I'm against IAs, but when we said we need to wait for the CWMP to be done for this area, there is no way we're going to get all 472 homeowners to agree to putting in IA systems. And the way that the gravity sewers work, you can't run a sewer line down a street and say, okay, you're going to tie into gravity, you're going to tie into, but you're going to have an IA because he's the one that wants to have it. No, if a sewer line's going down the street, there's sewer connections to it, and that's the bottom line. And this is, as a consultant, sometimes I have to say things that people don't like to hear, but this is the truth. And then, Sandy, why we're doing this now is because, again, to capitalize on these cost savings, there's a lot of areas in this that we may not be able to extend the sewers to, which we are going to vet those for IA systems. But there is no way that we're going to get every one of these homeowners to agree to an IA system. I hate to say it, but the CWMP is just not going to say that. So it goes back to my point of we know we need to do this now. We know there's going to be a collection system there. I love the IA, I love all this great technology, but if it's not approved by the state, we are on, so that 1-year delay turns into a 3 or 5 year delay. How many other ponds are going to be closed within the 3 to 5 years? How many more millions of dollars are we going to have to charge the resident? Go ahead.
So I was just at the New Year conference. Dan was there too. And the federal EPA was there. Brian Baumgartel and Scott Horsley, the engineering firm. Scott Horsley is the engineer that has been working with Wellfleet. Wellfleet is doing an IA system, and one of the biggest concerns with IAs is exactly what Russ is talking about, is the maintenance. So what they've identified is we need what they call RMEs, Responsible Maintenance Entities. And so Wellfleet and all the successful ones, there's not that many systems, town systems, I would call them, but it would be treated like a sewer treatment plant. It wouldn't be up to the homeowner to, call to get it pumped, because the homeowner, I agree, would be tempted to say, well, I want to save the money this year and I won't pump it. So there's a rigorous protocol for testing these, and if you implemented an RME, which is what all the Tisbury has a system, a group. Falmouth has had a system for over 4 years. They're averaging 6 milligrams per liter. So I would, again, disagree a little bit. Wellfleet is going in the direction of IAs. Where I think IAs shine is areas that are dispersed, not high. Picture a city. IAs are not going to work. Picture Allen Harbor, Wichita Harbor, Saquatucket Harbor. It's not going to work. If you picture East Harwich, Upper Muddy Creek, where we started our project, there's a lot of open land. IAs, that's where IAs can win, I believe. And I feel like we've never truly evaluated that. So I would reiterate, bring the public in on this conversation. I could be wrong, but let's properly evaluate it. Let GHD or whoever gets the contract to evaluate it, and then let's talk about it.
If I can just make,
Yeah, I'd like to move on with this discussion right now. This is, again, focusing in on East Harwich, expansion of the design for East Harwich. IAs are important, Sandy, I agree 100%, but this is what's going to be fleshed out in the revision of the comprehensive water plan. And it sounds like you have some checks while you're doing that comprehensive revision that it would affect the design project if it was approved. And I have confidence that you would do that before we get too far down the line. And otherwise, we'll be here till next week, still talking about this. And I appreciate it. You know, Sandy. And, so is there more discussion on this? I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor?
Need a motion.
Sorry about that. Motion?
I move that we approve and accept Article 2 to fund costs related to additional wastewater collection system design in the estimated amount of $2,100,000 with a funding source of free cash.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, motion's been made, it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes 7-0. Okay, moving on to Article number 3. Fund costs related to the wastewater collection system design on Continental Drive and Witta Drive for $400,000 from free cash. Some little background information on this. It's estimated 57 homes using the numbers we spoke to previous, roughly $62,000 per home. The construction cost for this, it's not being asked for tonight, but for the people out there, the construction cost for the general public, when you basically approve $400,000, all intents and purposes, you're going to approve the construction cost at some point. And those construction costs is $3.5 million. So,
And that was, I apologize
Yep.
for interruption, but that 3.5 was just based on the 60 plus some odd thousand?
$62,000, yeah.
Okay, so it's
No.
just based on that general number.
And it's just an average number. I did drive through there, I did look at it, and I'm thinking, well, maybe this might be a little less expensive, because you've got stubs at one end, stubs at the other end, and it looks like it's all flowing downhill, so it may be less than $62,000, but just based on all based on the two phases you've done, the $25 million we've spent, that's where I came up with the $62,000. Okay, Witta?
yeah, so this one is I guess still in flux.
Okay, just interject 1 second. If you could cover the design that might have been covered in phase 2 too, so it doesn't get, if you weren't going to.
That's what I was starting with.
Good.
So I actually received the sheets from CDM Smith today for
Good.
Continental and Witta, and while we have put this placeholder on, what we're trying to do is see if Those streets could be completed with funds that have already been appropriated. The Robert Hour Construction Contract 1, there's still a considerable amount of money remaining, and the work done to date appears to be done. I don't know if we're gonna have the funds to do it yet or not. So with that, if we do not have the funds to do it under the present appropriation, we'll be looking to do it under a future and looking to have GHD work with us to administer that work. Where we get into kind of conflict at this point is if we were to try to use the existing plans, the town has signed a contract with our former design engineer that would prohibit us from using those construction drawings unless we use them for the contract administration as well. So I don't know whether or not the town would have the palate to continue using them in a subsequent contract, so this funding is in here for if we need to go elsewhere.
When will that be determined, whether or not?
I am
By
hoping within the
town
next
meeting
week
time?
or so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're working on it, but.
Just add a couple, just real quick, so that $400,000 number, that was actually based on GHD starting the design from scratch. We were unsure of the status of the design, so now that we know we have a design that's completed, and because we're tying into 2 finite elevations at manholes at each end, there's not a lot of interpretation to the design. It's either done right or it's not, and provided it's done right, that $400,000 comes way down. It has been done in the past where one engineering firm administers the drawings of another engineering firm, but proceed with caution. It gets very messy and ugly when discrepancies come up. I'll just leave it at that. If we can avoid it, great, but it is possible.
So,
Yeah,
I have a question. So will you have all that sorted by town meeting? So that, for instance, if you,
Yes, we will have
can't-
we will have a hard number for you.
yeah, so that if it's less, then
will be
obviously
less.
way more appealing.
Potentially, it might
Might be removed.
be a lot less.
Yeah, that's
Or-
possible.
Yeah.
Or a lot,
Right,
considerably
yeah.
less, right.
Okay, that's cool.
Dan?
I'm good, thank you.
Brian? Dale?
No questions?
Angela? Mark, any questions? Sandy?
Oh, my God.
So
Again,
this is,
keep it to WITA and
Yeah.
Continental, please, no IAs, okay?
correct. WITA and Continental is unique because this sub-watershed, which is the Upper Muddy Creek, I'm starting to get them mixed up, but this watershed has already met its targeted load, TMDL. And so we're under no mandate, understand, to do this work for the Pleasant Bay Alliance or any state MEP requirements. I believe the neighborhood was promised that we were gonna do this in the original plan, and they spent money to the tune of $40,000 or more for engineering, and then everything went crazy, and the plan didn't happen. So this particular area, Upper Muddy Creek and Lower Muddy Creek, are the ones we're most concerned about because they include the area behind the Stag property, they include the area behind Meservies, they include the area behind the fire station. This is all area that developers want to develop. And if you bake in a whole bunch of extra capacity, meaning, let's just imagine you have to remove 100 kilograms per year. I'm just making that number up. If you put in capacity to remove, say, 1,500 kilograms per year, now you can develop without really bumping into this hard line.
But Sandy, we're just talking WITA and Continental here.
So WITA and Continental are in this watershed. And so by sewering them, because we're already over-sewering this area, we're additionally over-sewering and making it easier for areas in this swath to be developed.
But everything all new growth has to be sewered. So it would have to be sewered regardless of whether we do Continental and WITA.
It has to be accounted for.
The flow neutral provisions in the sewer use regulations state that all new growth has to be sewered. Nitrogen has to be removed.
So I believe a lawsuit could push those boundaries. The flow neutral is talking about any additional growth. So if your TMDL says you got to remove 1,000, anything above that has to be removed. That's what it's talking about. But since we've already expanded beyond that, it does pose a risk for 40Bs in this area.
I can't answer that, but thanks, Andy. And again, this is just the 57 homes of Widow and Continental. I'm not looking, from my understanding, we're not suing anything else or designing anything else in this particular part here. Any other questions from the board? No. Second? I mean, make a motion.
I move that we approve and accept Article 3 to fund the costs related to wastewater collection system design on Continental and Widow Drive. The estimated cost of $400,000 will be sourced from free cash.
Have a second?
I second.
Mark seconded. All those in favor of this article?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? This passes 7-0. Next article is fund costs related to Route 28 wastewater collection system design. I'll let Dan and Russ speak on this. I did ask on Monday night if we knew how many homes were projected to be covered in this particular design, and at that time you didn't know. And so if you can provide any information in this article.
Apologies, I don't have that number tonight. It's roughly 2,000 feet, plus or minus
2,200 feet.
2,200 feet. Average home, 100 foot of frontage, something like that. We could probably, 200 homes plus or minus, but don't quote me on that.
This is just to anticipate
Sure.
the road and all that. That's what we're talking mainly for this.
I can very quickly, Dan, get you that information tomorrow and you can pass it on. So this is, right now the water department's doing a project where they're replacing the water main in the street. Mass DOT is doing a paving project very soon, and we've had discussions, hey, would it be beneficial to put in a sewer main? If we know there's eventually at some point going to be a sewer pipe there. And the real benefit for that is we get to save potentially millions of dollars if Mass DOT does all the final paving. We'd still have to pay for some trench paving, things like that. But then the questions come up, which way is the pipe pitch? How big does it have to be? Is it going to go Dennis to Harwich? Well, we've already started looking at that with the sewer model. We know that the pipe is going to be pitched on Route 28 away from the town of Dennis, going into the town of Harwich, and then also the mains on Division Street that are going to tie into that. We've already had conversations with the staff in the town of Dennis to say if there'd be any sort of outside possibility that, come the opportunity, would Dennis put some of their flow into Harwich, which would reduce the cost of the IMA that Harwich gives to Dennis as things progress later on down the line. So we're trying to do our best to look 10, 15 years in the future. So this would be what we call a dry pipe in the ground. But again, having it there could be a potential significant savings. We did this in Route 132 in Hyannis. We put 3 sewer pipes for about 10,000 feet, and they sat dormant for about 15 years. But when Cape Cod Community College wanted to tie into Barnstable's plant, they were very glad those pipes were in the ground. And again, we're doing this now to save on the construction costs if we know we need to do it. There's a 5-year moratorium that Mass DOT places after road projects, so at a minimum would have to wait those 5 years. And it's only an economy of scale. If we can combine this with the water main, you save on both design, you save on both construction, potentially millions, $1 million plus dollars.
Dan, any other comment? Any other comment from questions of the board or anything on this one? From the public? Hearing none, I'd like to hear a motion on this.
I'd like to move that we approve and accept Article 4, funding the costs related to the Route 28 wastewater collection system design with an estimated cost of $200,000 sourced from free cash.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes 7-0. The next 2 articles, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Russ.
Welcome.
If you want to, I'll take one of your custom cards, Russ.
Sure.
I may be giving you a call.
I only have one left, so
I can pass it on to the rest of the group. And thank you very much. Thanks, Dan, again. Danny, thank you.
Thank you.
And Clara, too.
Better half.
Yes.
They always are, right?
The next 2 articles, one is on establishing a stabilization fund for the wastewater and a stabilization fund for affordable housing. This is going, the funds for this, these two funds will come out of the Article 7, which is raising the meals, what's it, the meals tax? Excise
Room tax.
from 4% to 6%. Carol, do you want to speak a little bit on this, or do you, or?
Not sure how much I can add.
Yeah, or maybe, why don't you sit there anyway?
So if the room tax doesn't get approved, then these two aren't needed?
Okay.
So this would set aside or reserve 25% of the rooms tax, no matter whether it goes from, stays at 4 or goes to 6.
Perfect, thank you.
And the intention here is to begin that process of building the funding plan for wastewater.
Okay, well, we just, so the first, Article 5 is create a wastewater special purpose stabilization fund. Requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, and there's no funds required for this. In fact, the funds are going into this. Make them.
I'd like to move that we accept and approve Article 5 to create a wastewater special purpose stabilization fund.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor of creating a wastewater special purpose stabilization funds, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next one is same article, type of article, but it's for 25% raised from Article 7 will go into affordable housing special purpose stabilization fund. Make a motion.
I move that we approve and accept Article 6 to create an affordable housing special purpose stabilization fund, excuse me.
Somebody second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of creating an affordable housing special purpose stabilization fund, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 7-0. Next one's Article 7. This is the amend the room tax rate per Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 3A, from 4 to 6%. Make a motion.
I move that we approve and accept Article 7 to amend room tax rate per MGL Chapter 64G 3A.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, been made and second. Any discussion? I just have one question, Carol. Is it 1.2 that's expected to be raised in total from 4 to 6%?
So currently, or in the last fiscal year, the lodging excise that was received in the town was just under $1.2 million. So this would increase it, another, third of that. Right, so it would be, and depending on how many folks came to Cape Cod and, were subject to lodging taxes that won't recur, I don't know that. There was some of that factor here. And, so we do estimate another, about $300,000 or $400,000 there or more that'll come into that fund. And then if the other articles pass, 50% of that would be designated out for special purposes.
And is that roughly maybe 500,000
I would say it's probably about 600,000 anyway.
per stabilization fund? Or we split
I would say in a normal world, it would probably be 300,000, safely to say 300,000 in each.
Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted to get to there. Any other discussion? All those in favor of raising the, second?
I'm gonna move.
Get it by the time we get to 14.
I move that we accept and approve Article 8 to fund I'm sorry. I thought we already voted on 7.
No, we did the room. It was
7.
you and I, and we did move it and second it.
Well,
and
okay,
we brought
okay.
discussion.
All those in favor of approving the room excise tax from 4 to 6%, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, next one is Article 8, fund non-union personnel wage increases. The number that the selectmen voted on, which you'll have to revote Monday, was $39,843. The new number tonight that we'll be voting on is $53,401, and these are wage increases, you know, negotiated with non-union personnel. Make a motion, Dan? Dale?
Can I ask a question first?
Sure. We can ask a question in the motion, after we make the motion.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I move that we approve and accept Article 8 to fund the non-union personnel wage increases in the amount of $53,401 funded through free cash.
And a second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. Any discussion?
Yeah. Who are the non-union personnel that will benefit from this wage increase?
So these are all the folks that fall under the personnel bylaw and anyone that has a contract directly with the Board of Selectmen, which includes the police chief, the fire chief, the town administrator, and myself. But personal bylaw employees are, you know, some of them are managers such as the DPW director, the water wastewater superintendent, and positions such as that. And then you have the positions that are lifeguards and part-time folks that work at the library and seasonal folks that work at the golf department.
Oh, there's
So
a lot of people under this number.
Yes, there are significant amount of folks that fall under the personal bylaws.
John?
Any,
Would it be fair to say that these are staff that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen?
Well,
Not
I would say
lifeguards.
that I'd say everyone is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. However, there's 4 individuals that work directly for the Board of Selectmen. All of the others fall under the town administrator. So the 4 that work directly for the Board of Selectmen, police chief, fire chief, myself, and the town administrator.
I guess to distinguish appointed versus being in civil service positions and part of the union representing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, these are non-union.
Oh, thank you.
These are all.
Any other
non-union.
questions? Okay. Let's entertain a vote on this. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Passes 7-0. Next one is Article 9, fund negotiated contract for the firefighters to the tune of 800. They'd like that, I guess, but $86,957, and it's coming from free cash. Make a motion, Dale?
I move that we approve and accept Article 9 to fund negotiated contract for the firefighters in the amount of $86,957 funded from free cash.
Any second?
I second.
Second's been made by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor of funding the negotiated contract for the firefighters, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? 7-0. Next one is fund negotiated contract for the water department. Estimated cost of $38,245. In the selectmen's meeting on Monday night, this article, they approved it being funded from free cash. As you can see in your sheet, it's been changed to water enterprise retained earnings, and I'm sure they'll revote that on Monday night. So make motion?
Yep. I move that we approve and accept Article 10 to fund negotiated contract for the water department in the estimated cost of $38,245 funded from water enterprise retained earnings.
I second.
Been seconded by Mark. And, okay, all those in favor of funding the negotiated contract for the water department?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 7-0. Next one is transfer of surplus bond proceeds. And now you hadn't adjusted a new number for this one, right?
$2,000, 217.
$2,000.
219,
Yeah, it went down.
217.
You have that number, Dan?
No, 217?
Yeah.
Yeah, 217,
Yeah, there it is.
456.
Okay. I move that we approve and accept Article 11 to transfer of surplus funds to bond proceeds in the amount of $217,894.56 to pay the cost of acquiring a fire quint apparatus.
Second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. Any discussions or questions of Carol for this? Okay. All those in favor of transferring surplus bond funds?
Aye.
All those opposed? The next one is land taking by eminent domain. Estimated cost is $25,000. This is to complete a puzzle of land that the town acquired earlier in the year called the Marcellini property. It's up pretty much right off you get off exit 10 there with the intent for affordable housing. And this is costs incurred to take that piece. You've seen it in your packet there, what it is. If you make a motion, Dale?
Yep, I move that we approve and accept Article 12, land taking by eminent domain. The land is located off Pleasant Lake Avenue on Route 124, identified as Assessor's Map 82, parcel R5, with an estimated cost of $25,000, funded through free cash.
I second.
Any-
Question.
Sure.
Carol, could you tell me, I read that, and maybe I read this incorrectly, that this is, that the town has had a lack of ability to clearly define the proper owners of this property. So who gets the 25 grand?
So I included that $25,000 in case there were legal fees or other fees associated with any kind of tax title research, that additional research that would have to be done. So there is no, so currently, this is categorized by the assessor's office as a miscellaneous parcel.
Right.
It's not being assessed a value. It's not in the assessor's database. It only appears on old maps that the assessor has. And those maps date back into, well, we went back to I think the 60s. And so there's no taxes that are due on this property right now. So the $25,000 I put in is a small amount to pay any ancillary costs that may be associated with taking this property.
So is it theoretically possible that a property owning claimant could file, once this is approved, and try and declare title to this land?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay, that's the impression I have as
Yes.
well. I mean, there's a million different ways, through appurtenances or other, that they can make a case that this is in fact their land, because they've utilized the land, and therefore we would have risk of additional fund transfer.
Correct.
It hadn't been used.
That's my concern. That 25,000 is great, and I appreciate the need. It's inadequate if in fact someone makes a direct claim
Correct.
against this property.
Any other discussion? And just as a little bit of a side note, the selectmen are aggressively going after some of these parcels now. So I'm sure this will come up more than once in the future too, right, Carol? In the meetings I've attended, the board is looking at it, title attorneys and stuff like that.
Correct.
To aggressively go after.
So you know the laws relative to appurtenances,
Yes.
especially if they utilize the land and they're in a butter, that they could declare ownership of the land because it's an appurtenance. So I'm just simply saying, I think there's proposed potential risk that goes beyond 25 grand. I just wanted to have that on the table.
I agree.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, that's good.
It's been, any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 12, taking land by eminent domain? Please say
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, we already voted for the ambulance. Almost here. Article 14, fund prior year's unpaid bills. This is kind of a housekeeping issue that comes up in annual town meeting. We appeared here. It's bills that come up and that we can pay for. The selectmen on Monday night voted $8,085.33. I'm sure they'll revisit it on Monday night. Funding sources are from various sources: free cash, water retained earnings, and Community Preservation Committee's annual town meeting articles. Make a motion?
I move that we approve and accept Article 14 to fund prior year's unpaid bills in the estimated amount of $10,405.33 funded from free cash, water retained earnings, and CPC Town Meeting 19, number 41.
Second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor of funding prior year's unpaid tax bills, please signify by saying yes.
Aye.
All those opposed? No, okay. That takes care of the warrant articles. Carol, do you want to take this sheet here and give it to Joe tomorrow? Or
Okay,
should
I
you-
have my own, if that's okay?
That's it?
I
Okay,
did, I have my own.
okay, good. Okay. So you'll transmit that to
Yes.
Joe or to the appropriate people there? Okay. Thank you, Carol, for
welcome.
staying
Thank
here
you.
and giving us information. Next on our agenda to tonight is old business. There's none listed there, but something did come up. Karen sent an email out to everybody in the committee and about some thoughts she had on the taxes that Dale and I had met with Joe and Carol on, and unfunded or approved warrant articles, but unspent warrant articles. We met with Joe and Carol, we discussed what was going on, and they are moving on both fronts. The selectmen are aggressively, I think, going after some of these uncollected property taxes, and Joe, I have seen him administering contracts out there for some of these warrant articles. But to Karen's point, we should somehow come up with a way of recording this and getting it on our website. It's the progress that we are making, the town's making on these two subjects. And another subject that I'm concerned about is a plan for the cultural center. We have no plan for that building that I've seen, and we're spending monies. We've got capital requests coming up this year for that building, and I'd like to see some type of direction from the selectmen of what we're gonna do with that building. So that being said, Karen has volunteered to help me to put something together to that effect, and we'll bring it back at another meeting.
Great.
And I did mention to Karen, she didn't know at the particular time, and all the members know, that when I send something out, it's for informational purposes, and we're not supposed to respond back to me in numbers. It could constitute as a meeting at some point if we start passing emails amongst ourselves. It's so Karen is aware of that. It's a
Yeah, I'm
rookie
aware.
mistake. But I appreciate it. It's a good point, Karen. I'm glad you did it. So if nothing else is on people's minds?
A few meetings back, we talked about appointing liaisons to the various.
Yes.
And I know we came up with, well, I'm not sure if we have a list, but we
Yeah.
came up with people who raised their hands
Yeah.
to, for example, I agreed to be the liaison to the Brooks Library and CPC.
Okay.
And I think there's a third one, but I forgot what that was. In any event, are we gonna come up with a final
Sure.
list?
What I can do is I can dig that list out, Dan, and then revisit, we'll put that on for the next agenda item too.
Okay.
And to that point, we are starting to get into annual town meeting
Right.
type stuff coming up.
We can-
We may meet again for the special town meeting, we'll see. But the next meeting we have, I'll bring that up. I think that's important. That was evident in the selectmen's meeting Monday night. They talked about selectmen's being liaisons to various committees, and I think it's important. And Mary Anderson is our liaison from the select board. But that's a good point, Dan. I'll make it. If there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Caleb.